talk about the distance between two vectors. Let vector u has component u1, u2, and vector v has component v1 and v2. Then you can easily find the distance between these two vectors by finding the square root of the difference between the first components, u1 minus v1 squared, plus u2 minus v2 squared. Very good. It can also be written as the magnitude of the difference between these two vectors. As you remember, if you have, for example, two vectors in the plane, one of them is, for example, vector u, and the other guy is vector v. You can find the difference between these two vectors, which is going to be this vector here. But since we are finding the magnitude here, we're not going to assign any arrow. This guy is the distance between them, which is basically the norm for the magnitude of u minus v. This is similar to what you did in pre-calculus. In pre-calculus or algebra, basically, you're saying that if you have, for example, 2 points, one point here, for example, x1, y1, and the other point here, x2 and y2, you can find the distance between these 2 points. D is equal to the square root of the difference between x coordinates plus the difference between y coordinates squared. So we are basically doing the same thing. Look at the terminal points. The terminal points for u is u1 and u2. The terminal points for v are v1 and v2. You're basically finding the difference between the very first components and square it, and then you find the difference between second components and square it. So you're basically doing the same thing as you did in algebra. Let's go over one example for you here. Let u be vector -1 and -4, and v be another vector 2 and 3. Then what is the distance between u and v, or what is the magnitude or the norm between u minus v? Basically, you're saying that, hey, I'm finding the square root of the difference between x values, -1 minus 2 squared, plus the difference between y values, or the second components in this case, to the second power. So here you have 9 plus 49, which is square root of 58. That's the difference between these two, or finding the distance or length or magnitude.